I love everything about this island. I love everything about it.
I could not. I do too, but I could not live there.
Oh
I could
no!
not.
Oh
I
no!
could not live on a number one. I could not live with that many crazy religious people. No offense to anyone who's crazy and religious.
Welcome to Flan-Again, a Mike Flanagan rewatch, brought to you by the Articulate Coven. For more information on the original Anne Rice fan podcast and community, visit articulatecoven.com and find more about this show at articulatecoven.com/Flan-Again. Welcome to Flan-Again, a Mike Flanagan rewatch podcast. Yes, you're right. The title is different. We are the Articulate Coven. We're your hosts. I'm Joel.
I'm Ashley.
And we are the Articulate Coven. Ashley, I gave a different name at the top of the thing. This is going to run in your regular feed, and so will all the rest of the episodes. If you're an Articulate Coven listener and you're like, wait a minute, I signed up for episodes of Midnight Mass, those will still be in your feed. But we are going to create a separate feed. Ashley and I have toyed with this idea in the past. We've joked about Mike Flanagan being the one other creator that we would want to do a podcast about, like we have Anne Rice. We're going to do it, though. It'll be under the Articulate Coven banner. Every episode in the future will not be in the feed, though. And in particular, once we get done with Midnight Mass, patrons are going to get these early. But the regular feed will get it if you sign up for the Flan-Again podcast in all of your podcast apps. We'll tell you when that goes public. But Ashley, you're actually going to do the first direct thing for that show. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. Well, you know, in the spirit of Joel and his lovely wife joining forces for some Articulate Love-In episodes, my hubby Brat and I are going to watch the Fall of the House of Usher and do some episodes about that. So I'm really excited.
I'm so excited.
I love it so much. I'm a huge Poe fan. Huge. And then I'm also, unabashedly in love with Mike Flanagan's work. So I'm really excited. And then as a little special treat, we might even do some audio recordings of some Poe stories and poems, because that shit's public domain and we don't have to pay for it. We can do what we want with it. We do what we want with it.
Spoiler warning, there will be many Eleanor mentions. That's all I'm telling you. You're going to hear a lot about Eleanor. It's kind of like with if you're going to listen to Counting Crows, you're going to hear about Maria. If you're going to read Poe, you're going to hear about Eleanor.
It's Lenore, Eleanor. There's all sadness and drugs and fun. I love it so much. It's so fun.
Wait a minute. Are you talking about Midnight Mass, Ashley?
Let's do that, shall we?
I am so excited to be talking about this show. We're going to do this for 7 weeks in a row. We're going to go through the show episode by episode, just like we did Interview with the Vampire, just like we did Mayfair Witches, and really break this show down. This one, listen, we're big fans of all of Mike Flanagan stuff, and over time, we're going to cover the other series too. Ashley and I, in particular, are really excited to talk about the Midnight Club, which is Christopher Pike based.
I love it. That was so much fun.
That'll come in time. This is a show that I think is very relevant to the Articulate Coven audience directly. And I joked about this, I think, once on the podcast. This felt to me like Mike Flanagan realized he was never going to get the Anne Rice rights. And he's like, well, but I got an Anne Rice story. And it's not just Anne Rice. It's more Stephen King.
It's got real Stephen King vibes. Big time. Very, very big Salem's Lot vibes. Big time. It's... It definitely has that feel to it. It also has that creepy fucking like cursed town kind of vibe to it too. That's very Stephen King to me.
Absolutely. I mean, that is, I think, the thing about King is that and you said it before, the evil is never the monsters. It's the people. It's always the people.
Yeah. And this one, this show in particular has got a real bitch of a character that is just a fucking monster.
Oh my god,
Bev is such a bitch, and we'll get into it. She's the worst. She's the worst.
I want to say thank you. Listen, honestly, the reason why this Flan-Again thing is happening is because of our patrons.
Yes,
We are
100%.
just about to cross 20 paid members on the Patreon, by the way. You can go to articulatecoven.com/join if you want to be a member there. If you join for $2 a month or more, you get early access to all the videos and audio and stuff. So the Fall of the House of Usher episodes from Ashley and Brat, you'll get those on the Patreon at least 2 weeks early, and then they'll go out in the regular feeds and YouTube too. But if you're in a position to do that, we really want to say thank you and appreciate you for doing so.
Very much.
Amiee, DiBrango, Gaica, Heather Heise, Lara, and Stephen Hensley, as well as Tamara Moore. Those are our fledglings. No, wait, I forgot somebody. Mère, Rosina, and Sharlien are our fledglings as well. Then we've got Angela Stephenson, Brat Prince Bran, Dani Moreira, Gabbi Necklen, Jennifer Morgan, Judith Tigner, Mandy Taylor, Mendi Raftery, all are makers at the $5 level. Thank you. Madam Mère is our Children of the Millenia. And then Nancy Ward is the Queen of the Damned herself.
Yes. We love you, Nancy.
You guys make us proud. And honestly, you guys make all of this stuff possible. Yeah. You don't need to know the behind the scenes, but Ashley and Brat are going to record in this cool online software that you're paying for basically with those patron dollars. So thank you for that. And then that'll make it easy for me to pull the files and put everything together and get them out for you. So this is what you made possible. Kudos.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much.
Hope you enjoy it.
Also, we're definitely producing way more content now. So
holy moly. There's so much. Hey, if you've just discovered us or you're listening to this new podcast that we're launching with this episode and you don't know about that show, we are big Anne Rice fans. Huge. We have a whole fandom and community that we'd love you to join us over there where we talk mostly about that. But a lot of those folks are big Mike Flanagan fans too, just like we are. So that's what we're here to talk about. Episode 1, the book, or book 1, I should say, Genesis. From Midnight Mass on Netflix. All right, we're going to start with music, Ashley. I think somebody asked, Mandy asked maybe, oh God, please talk about the music in this show. And there is so much good music.
There is. It's fantastic.
You and I were praising the benefits of Saint Neil earlier off air. But that's what we start with. And the Grass Won't Pay No Mind. It's from 1969's Brother Love's Travel and Salvation show. It opens the show. We see the lights of the police car reflected in a Jesus fish, which ends up belonging to our hero, Riley. It's a incredible juxtaposition of song and moment. The song is a romantic song. The song is, let's lay here in the grass and let the world fade away while I just love you.
Meanwhile, he's caused a drunk driving accident where the girl has flown out of her windshield and is getting CPR on the road. Very
unsuccessful CPR. She passes away there in front of him. It's beautiful irony the way that these are laid together. In particular, because of the final line of the song that we hear anyway. It's not the final line of the song, but we hear Neil say one more time, and the grass won't pay no mind, as Riley realizes that he's killed this girl.
Yeah.
And so then it goes from, we'll lay here in the grass together, loving each other as the world passes away from us, to your world is ended. And you've just killed this woman or this girl. And what a horrible series of events to have happened. And you're the cause of all this tragedy. But time marches on. The world keeps spinning. No one, that's... What's the 50 song? Don't they know it's the end of the world? Which is about a heartbreak. But like, Riley's world is over, and this woman's world is over, and all of her family's world is over.
Yeah.
And the grass don't pay no mind, Ashley.
Because it just, So if there's one thing I learned from Sir David Attenborough, not Richard, David Attenborough, it's that grass is always going to continue to grow no matter what the fuck is happening around it. It may look real dead, but the grass
grows. Just beautiful start to the show.
Well, it is. It's shot really well, obviously, and it has this sort of like dream-like kind of quality to it. And then because it's Mike Flanagan, and I've watched Haunting of Hill House, and I've watched Blind Manor, and I've watched, I now think in my brain that this ghost girl is going to play a huge part in this series. And it really, it really isn't about that at all. So that's one of the really cool kind of misdirections that they do right off the bat. I think from, Flanagan as a storyteller here, is that you're getting a little bit of a misdirection about what this story is going to be about.
Is that the moment we get the first glimpse of his dream? He's laying down, he sees her, but does he see himself in the boat? Or is that later?
I know it happens later in the episode for sure, but there might be a flash of it there. I don't know if we see that yet though.
Yeah, but that recurring,
but you definitely
the girl is part of the recurring dream.
Yeah, and she is very. I mean, obviously she's very important, but it's not what I thought it was going to be. Like I remember distinctly watching this episode for the first time and being like, "Oh, this fucking creepy girl is going to be around this whole show."
She's not like a secret sister that comes up late in the season or anything.
No, indeed not.
Okay, when he got into his prison cell, though, so he gets sentenced, he goes to prison, and this is all done in flashes, like very well, very well. But the Bible is only signed by Mom.
Yeah.
Dad didn't even put his name in it.
No.
Ashley, did you have a lot of cards that were only signed by one of your parents?
Oh, no, actually, I did not.
That wasn't a failure.
No.
Of the.
No.
Yeah.
I did not, shockingly enough. That's actually, usually I had both signatures on it.
I got a lot of cards with Mom and Dad written in there, but they were both in the same handwriting, which was Mom's.
I'm sure I got more than my fair share of that, but I can distinctly say that my dad would usually jot a little message in as well.
I mean, most Christmases, Dad would ask me what I got after I opened it up, not knowing.
No,
not
gifts.
Knowing.
My dad was really good at gifts, weirdly enough.
That's interesting.
It is. It's very
something we'll get to.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those examples of a great way that alcoholics cope and like compensate by being like overly good in some areas to get by.
100%. I agree with that 100%. So this show right off the bat, starting off with alcoholism. Obviously, Riley's got a problem with the drink, and he is out of control and has hit his rock bottom. Presumably, one would hope that this would be enough to be rock bottom. So yeah, it's an interesting thing watching him come back from that to see how he's going to deal with his family, how his family is going to deal with him. Like, I mean, you're talking about this. His fuck up was big. Like, that's huge. You like what you said, Joel. He just stopped the world from spinning for so many different people because of that action, and so there's a lot for him to unpack and for him to atone for, and that's one of the big themes of this whole story.
The thing that never touched me until literally this watch of this episode, if Riley had not screwed up his own life, he would have been in a position to float and absorb the failure of the island for his mom and dad.
Yeah.
When things went bad for his mother and father, he could have made a loan, he could have purchased property, he could have moved them. Like, what if there are a million answers to their issues that Riley could have provided? Never mind absorbing all their savings in legal fees and things like he did, right? Like he ditched their social safety nets, but also he could have provided a new one if he had just stayed on the track as a hotshot startup kid or whatever. Yeah, and it didn't matter that dad doesn't know what you're doing. Like, let's be honest,
No, it doesn't. Who cares?
Yeah,
I did. That's never really hit me before either.
Yeah,
that's a really interesting
them coming
thought.
and going.
Yeah,
man.
He really did.
He did.
You think about, I definitely have thought about like how much fucking money they had to dump into his lawyers, and then what he had to pay the family in restitution and all of that. But I never really thought about like how he could have gotten them out of the situation. Potentially none of this shit ever even happens.
At least not to them, right? Like at least not to this family. Population 127. We see the sign on the way into the island. I love everything about this island. I love everything about it.
I could not. I do too, but I could not live there.
Oh no!
I could not live on a. Number one, I could not live with that many crazy religious people. No offense to anyone who's crazy and religious. However, I would feel so trapped on a small island like that. Like, I would feel very, very stuck there. Like,
it's
I need more
interesting.
than 2 fairies. I need my own boat or some shit.
You know, we talked already about how Flan-Again, especially in this series, is very King influenced, Stephen King. But Salem's Lot or Derry or Castle Rock, none of those towns are as perfectly isolated as Crocket Island, right?
Yeah.
Like it feels like Stephen King saw this and went, damn it, that's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, I'm pretty sure he did say that. Well, and I think that, you know, Stephen King has his own little kind of story not similar to this, but kind of has the same sort of vibe with Storm of the Century. I don't know if you've ever saw it. Now,
no, I haven't seen the movie. No, I haven't read the book either. I don't think
it's not a book. It's only it's a teleplay. It's only a series. Like, it was a little mini series, and I
didn't know he did anything like that.
Oh yeah, it's not. It's, you know, it's like, so it's this little town. I think it is a fucking island, but like this weird storm rolls in, this like fog and shit, and this guy shows up and he sings "I'm a Little Teapot," and it's really fucking weird. I made so much fun of it.
Well, now I gotta go look at it.
Yeah, no.
Now I gotta go find this.
Our friend Jana, loves this series so much. She made Jessica and Hester and I watch it, and I just remember both of us. Like, there's a photograph of us watching it, and I'm sitting, like, looking at the TV screen, like, it's so funny. It's hilarious. But yeah, so that has kind of this vibe too. It's sort of a similar sort of feeling, like, you know, shit is not okay. It's not going to be okay on this island. Like, everything seems really pretty, and it's very like cutesy and kind of like, it's just it's very run down, but it's got this very like vibe that's very small towny, and yeah, it's so strange.
I think it's a line from Salem's Lot, or maybe maybe it was just us talking about it. I don't know, but it's like, you can feel when a place is rotten.
Oh yeah. When you know the place is bad, yeah.
You know, and it hasn't died yet.
Yeah,
but it's rotten.
That's like, you know, when when something's got kind of petering out and just ending.
This place is rotten, and you can feel it as you're walking through it. Okay, which, by the way, so we get the quick phone call from Riley home to confirm his travel plans when he's getting out of prison here. It's 4 years. So we get that opening scene, and then we flash 4 years later to the actual show itself. But as soon as the phone call is done, we get younger brother leaving the house on his bike, and it's such a brilliant moment, because in one, and it's not, they don't do the montage thing, but in one just couple of minute little section, we play some good music, and we introduce you to all of our players. Like, here we go, now you know everybody. And it's so well done, all to the tune of
Suleiman.
Yeah, man. Okay, so let's talk about Suleiman. Suleiman, another Neil Diamond song here.
Much lesser known. I feel like much lesser known Neil song.
Well, but okay, it's not even really a song on its own. It was released as a single, and it charted at like I think it made it to number 30 in the U.S. But it's from the Taproot manuscript in 1970. That's the album. But this is part of a 3-song sequence called the African Trilogy. It's one song. The main character is named Suleiman, and it like follows him through 3 songs, but they all run together, this 19-minute long thing. Suleiman is the middle section and is the catchiest one, so they pulled that out as a single, and it did good, and it rocks too.
Yeah, it's a great tune.
Here's what I want to talk about is the fucking lyric. Okay, so first of all, there's the opening of "And the Grass Won't Pay No Mind" has a reference to God as well. But this song is like very spiritual. Okay. Yes. Let me read you this. This is the chorus. God of my want, Lord of my need, leading me on to the woman she danced for the sun. Any of that going to be relevant to this series, Ashley? God of my day, Lord of my night, seek for the way, taking me home.
Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. This is some really good choices, and I meant to look up who was like the music coordinator, and it might be his composers doing it.
The Newton brothers. So we're going to get to them too.
Yeah.
I think they are. I believe they are the supervisors, but I'll confirm that for next episode.
Yeah.
All right, but it goes further. It goes further on Suleiman. All right, Suleiman, where does that word come from? Who is that? Isn't there like a famous conqueror that was named Okay, the famous conqueror named Suleiman was like Suleiman the Magnificent or whatever. That's spelled differently and is not the reference here. A lot of people will tell you that the name Suleiman, Suleman, is the Arabic version of the name Solomon. And that name means man of peace, okay? Which is interesting if you think about it. Biblically speaking, King David was a warrior king, was not allowed by God to build the temple because he had blood on his hands. Solomon, his son, was the man of peace. He was the king of peace, and so he got to actually build the temple in Jerusalem. But also, though, here's you go further. I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense.
There's so many fucking layers.
The names don't connect, right? So here's the word from Neil. He was inspired by the word Salama, Salamah, which means hello or welcome, but also goodbye or peace be with you. It's a African aloha. Yes, it's an African aloha, basically. So this is very fitting in that as our little brother character here drives across the island on his bike, over and over again, he is saying, hello, welcome, peace be with you, hello, but also goodbye.
Yeah, also bye. I'm on my way out.
Okay, anyway, I love it. Top to bottom, that song kicks ass.
I love it.
So well placed here. We're introduced to Sheriff Hassan, played by Raul Coley, and he is so scrumdiddlyumptious, actually.
I love him. He's so great. He's also in Bly Manor, and he's also in House of Usher.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so he's one of the Flan-Again players, and what a treat he is. He's fantastic.
If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see this tweet itself, but I found him on Threads recently. He's on Threads. I followed him there.
Oh, yeah, he's hilarious.
He's very funny. He recently posted this, which you're seeing on screen now. It's a tweet from Ben Barry that said, now that's one good-looking sheriff, and a winky face, and he tagged Raul, and he has a screenshot of this moment where he's standing on the front steps of the general store, and Raul reshared that and said, yeah, he's hot. I've been giving him hand jobs for over 20 years.
So fucking great. I forgot how funny he is on Twitter.
Raul had shared that whole thing on Threads and said, me, I wonder why I haven't made it yet. Also me. Yeah, I've been giving myself hand jobs for 20 years. So anyway, he's a very funny dude. If you're on Threads, follow him. Okay, Ashley, you mentioned the Newton brothers a minute ago. They come in right about this moment, too, with a choral element for the first time, as we meet Father Paul dragging in a not at all suspicious box.
Look, I knew what was fucking up this minute. This minute I was like, oh, shit! Because, like, when this first show came out, you did not know this was vampires.
Well, okay, if you're watching this now on Netflix, I guarantee you there's vampires on some of the imagery that you're seeing.
Yeah, but there wasn't
None of
anything.
That was... Nope. We didn't know. We just knew it was going to be another Mike Flanagan horror project.
On Netflix, and we were ready for it. Yeah, no. So this is the moment, though, I was like, oh, that's a fucking vampire in that crate. And I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure yet about all the pieces, but I knew for goddamn sure you knock on a box and it knocks back at you. You got a vampire in a box.
That's a vampire box.
That's a vampire box.
You got a vampire box. I like that.
Have dirt in there from where it came from too. I bet.
Oh my god! And he does later in the show. It's open and there's dirt in the box.
Yes, I was like, this is some Dracula bullshit right here.
Yeah. Okay. But this is the first time that we hear the Newton
alert.
brothers too. You know that already if you're watching it this now. The Newton brothers do the whole soundtrack, okay? And they've basically done all of Flanagan's stuff, like all the way back to like the Hush movie.
Oculus, yeah. Like,
yes.
I mean, they've been with him for a while.
But here's what I didn't connect. They did the X-Men 97 series, Ashley.
They did? I forgot that. Oh, shit.
Yes. They did the
totally
updated
forgot.
version of the theme song and everything.
Yes, they did. Oh, my God. And y'all, if you haven't watched that, that's a good time.
So good.
That's a good time.
Great queer representation too in that show, honestly. So like very impressive.
Very fantastic.
All right, let's talk about the upwards. That's where little brother wanted to go in the first place. Ashley, where did teenagers go to get into trouble when you were growing up?
Downtown. You went downtown.
Downtown Hot Springs.
Downtown, yeah, downtown Hot Springs. But you had to be really careful because if you got into too much shit down there, you could get into a lot of trouble because it's federal land because you're on in a national park.
Right.
So we made fun of what we called the tree cops. Who
The park rangers.
the rangers, the national park rangers. We called them tree cops. But yeah, usually it was downtown, or you go to the lake, depending if it was summertime, you went to the lake.
So in Bastrop we had the Loop, which wasn't a loop. I've been thinking about this
cruising?
a lot lately.
Was it a cruising loop?
Yes, it was very much a cruising. So there was
we had that too on Central.
there was like a Sonic at one end, no, a McDonald's at one end, and a Johnny's Pizza at the other end, and a Sonic in the middle.
God, I miss
and
Johnny's.
and then on the other side of it was like the public baseball fields and stuff. So like early afternoon, there'd be families there, and like you'd have to be hanging out with your kid brother for his t-ball game anyway.
Right.
So it was very conveniently located, right? But you'd literally, I remember when I was a child, like 12 or 11, they put in speed bumps because the kids were cruising up and down and like drag racing on it.
Oh my
And
God,
so they put in speed bumps at every 5 feet. And so you'd cruise at like 2 miles an hour while you played very loud music. And boom, 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 boom. Or if it wasn't super crowded, you could go to the edge and like swoop around the speed bump or like put one tire over it, anyway.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very impressive cruising up and down the loop.
There's
Busting a loop, we called it. Or my mother
Busted
did,
a
at least.
loop. Oh my God, that's hilarious. A Sonic was involved in our cruising route as well. And I worked there.
Listen, if you're not from the South, you don't understand how key Sonic fountain drinks are to the development of teenage culture.
Oh God, give me a root.
It's very important.
Now.
I will never pass up a Sonic. I never not want a Sonic drink. Bev Keane, we meet Bev Keane, the world's busiest busybody.
Y'all, I don't
This
prefer
bitch.
to call women bitches. I don't prefer to call women bitches, but this bitch,
She earns it.
This bitch,
She earns it from moment one. The first moment we
Yes.
meet her, she's nagging Sturge.
she is, and she's just hateful. She's just hateful. Like everything about her is fucking infuriating. She talks down to everybody. She treats everybody like trash. Like she is definitely that religious that thinks she is the godliest of the godly ones. Like that is
A
her
certain kind.
Woo!
Yes.
We
Boy.
all know her. Y'all know her.
Well, and they're very commonly in leadership in church
Yes.
communities
Oh my
because,
gosh.
frankly, because no one has the balls
To
to
fight
tell
with
them to
them.
sit down. Yes,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
everyone is so concerned at causing a look.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we try not to get very political very often, but the reason I think why our former president has had as much success in politics as he has had is because it is so rare to have someone who is willing to say anything and to do anything on a public stage. Most people are worried about dignity,
Yeah.
or they're worried about offense, or they're worried
Yeah.
about, well, how will I look them in the face tomorrow at the office? And that guy is not worried about those things.
No,
Bev
and
Keane ain't either.
Neither's Bev. Yeah, no,
No.
she doesn't. It doesn't matter how you look at her because God is looking at her in the best way.
Man, when you've convinced yourself
Ooh,
that's honestly, that's the whole point of this series, I think, largely, is when you have convinced yourself without even any willingness to consider doubt or alternate facts or evidence. When you've convinced yourself that God is on your side, you are willing to justify any action, right?
It's
And that's what
bananas.
we get right from moment one with Bev Keane. I mean, look, if it didn't make clear when she's short and rude with Sturge, who's just trying to do his job,
he's doing his job.
she then immediately snaps at Joe Collie about his dog, and it's
Right.
like, oh, she's literally the Wicked Witch of the West, this
Uh-huh.
bitch.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, yeah, and it's a
Okay.
big, like, aggressive-looking dog. It's like what, a Cane Corso
Sure.
or something. Sure,
Yeah.
sure, fine, Bev. It's sitting on the porch. It didn't come out like she's just a twat. I cannot with Bev Keane.
That's it.
I mean, she is the worst. And this actress is fucking phenomenal because she's done a lot of Flan-Again work as well. And every time she's playing a very different character, this was such a different role than I'd seen her in before. She was always like she's like the sweet neighbor in Hush, and she was one of the main character's wives in Hill House. And so I was like, always seen her as like playing this like kind of very normal,
Matronly.
not a hateful bitch. And this woman she's the worst. Like this show really unpacks a lot of what I have a problem with organized religion about.
Oh, boy.
I mean,
I was watching it the other night, and I'm like, I pull out my earbud to talk to Kelly for a minute, and I'm like, man, this show just keeps reminding me how every time I mention religion on Interview with the Vampire, Ashley goes, religion's so weird.
and I mean, okay, so if you haven't listened to us before, I was raised literally without religion, pretty much. Like, it was an auxiliary thing that happened in the background. Other people were doing it. I obviously know the ins and outs. I live in the South. It's not like it's not like
you're exposed to it.
Yeah, and I would, I think for a long time I would have been like, yeah, sure, I'm a Christian, whatever, like let's roll. It doesn't matter. Like, who cares?
You're like culturally Christian, like they talk about, like culturally Jewish.
Yeah, like that's fucking how it feels growing up in the South. But I don't carry around a lot of religious baggage, or the only religious trauma I have is from people trying to force it on me, whereas like this, I think this shit is triggering for a lot of people who have done a lot of work to like unentwine themselves from like religion that skews a little culty or that requires more of you than it should.
So I was not raised Catholic, and I've never been Catholic, practicing Catholic. I've got some family members who are, and obviously I live in Louisiana. Ashley and I both went to college in Louisiana, and so we were exposed to a lot of Catholics and Catholicism. But again, that's like a cultural thing, not in my own family. In my own family, I come from a very fundamentalist background. My father was Free Will Baptist, which is a particular kind of crazy.
A real treat. It's a real treat.
They broke off from the Southern Baptists because the idea that the Southern Baptists believed in once saved, always saved, i.e., once you are actually, born again into the kingdom of God, there's nothing you can do that can pull you out of that. God would literally take your life before he would allow you to commit some sin so grievous that you would lose your salvation. And my dad says, hold up a minute. No, that's too polite.
Yeah, that is not rough enough around the edges for me, for my God.
Literally, the concept that I had growing up was as God as a giant cop in the sky with a billy club, who is very, very excited about the opportunity to smack you in the head with it. So like, constantly in fear of not only damnation, but like, what if I walk astray and don't know it, sort of thing, Now, as a Protestant,
so much fuckery.
So much trauma to put on a child, like someone who doesn't understand. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, what I don't have in my background is the high church mysticism that comes with the things like transubstantiation, which we're going to talk about in a little bit when we get to church. But anyway, so that's a background of where Ashley and I are going to come from on this, and interesting conversations to have. If in particular you've got some Catholic information that we miss or overlook,
please,
love to hear that in the comments. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you are feeling about these storylines as we go through them too. All right, I want to talk about declining towns real quick. Ashley, this was less a problem for you, I think, growing up. You grew up in Little Rock, Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Yeah.
But Hot Springs is also a town in decline versus its high point.
Well, and
a tourist town, so like you're not relying on an industry exactly.
Right, but tourism is the industry there. Yeah. Which is the tricky thing, and so yeah, it does require you to, like, I can't imagine what it was like there during COVID. I haven't lived there since I actually left for college, so I haven't lived in Hot Springs in a really long time. But it is, and it was a town in decline, especially like the downtown area was kind of rough around the edges. Like you really had to have your head on a swivel when you were wandering around. I was the reason my car breaking down in very, very bad parts of town was the reason why one of my friends got her first cell phone. She was the first person I know that had a bag phone. They're like, if you're gonna hang around with poor people, you need a bag phone.
So we can airlift you out from the bad neighborhoods.
You can SOS if you need it. Yeah, so like it was, and also my dad was an alcoholic. My dad was a gambling addict. I hung out at the racetrack, which at that time.
There's a really nice racetrack there.
It's fantastic. But at that time, it was a little run down. It was a little bedraggled around the edges. There was smoke everywhere. It did have this vibe of my town did have a little bit of a vibe of like it's not what it once was.
You're 20 years too late.
Yeah. At least, at least there. Yeah.
So I grew up in a paper mill town,
See,
Bastrop, Louisiana.
I've
no, I
smelled
didn't
it.
say a dirty word. Bastrop, Louisiana.
Bastrop.
I can't remember the name of the play now, but there's a Broadway play actually about a mother and her daughter-in-law that are living together during World War II as their husband and or their two husbands are off fighting the war. That's set in Bastrop, but they had to change the name of the town when the Broadway version because none of the actresses, they couldn't say it right, and the audience thought they were saying Bastrop.
Oh my God.
Anyway, it's a paper mill town. International Paper was there, and when I was a baby, it was still booming. It was big business. Everybody that worked at the mill, that was a cushy job. You had great benefits for life, the whole 9 yards. And then by the time I was 10, 12, they had their first big layoff. And then by the time I went to college, it was closed. There's not, I think there is still a location there, but it's like a few hundred people instead of the tens of thousands that worked there once upon a time, right? It was a huge operation. It went to nothing.
How that happens.
And there's no industry in that town to replace it, right? They've got a Walmart and they've got a giant sporting goods store that's been there for 40 years. That's it's literally like a single one family owned Bass Pro Shop, but it's in the middle of North Louisiana in this weird little town for no good reason. Anyway, the point is that is a town in decline, and that's all that I ever knew was this. You're 20 years late for anything good in this town.
Steady downward decline, fast. Yeah.
Because it's just like you see as Riley and Mom are walking into town in just a minute, they're going to pass the house and say, "Oh yeah, the Millers left last."
People aren't even
April.
bothering to sell their houses at this point.
Didn't even list it; they just left it.
They just fucking left it. And so they're fish. Obviously, this is like a fishing community. But there's been some sort of oil spill, some sort of oil-related incident that happened that caused a lot of upheaval for them and has really dried up the fishing, affected the environment. And it sounds like they got kind of bullied into taking a settlement from the oil company that wasn't to their benefit necessarily. It's to the benefit of the community maybe, but not to their individual households.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like a series of negative events. It's not one thing; it's a million things.
And it has that bitch Bev Keane.
We'll get there in an episode or two, I think. We don't go much into that right now. I want to mention one quick note here. Anybody who's ever worked in a church or volunteered in a church, I guarantee you are affected by the 4s to replace the A's on the church sign. Did you notice this, Ashley?
I noticed that every single time, but I never...
There's two things that you know immediately about this. First of all,
they don't have enough
some
letters.
of the A's walked off.
Right.
But secondly, they will not or cannot afford to buy new ones, right? And it's a combination of those. Again, it's like one of those this is a town in decline. There are things wrong here. Things are falling apart. And we're doing our best to keep up appearances. But it's a tiny thing, but it's something that you will see so much in small churches. So much in small churches.
That's interesting.
Because again, they bought those letters for that bulletin board, 30 years ago, and we don't even know the company that we ordered those from or where we
not
get
even exist anymore. It closed in Bastrop.
You're right, exactly. They closed when the paper mill did. Okay, Omar Sharif is referenced here, I think twice in this episode, but it comes up again later too. I want to make this clear in case you don't know. Omar Sharif is an actor. He was born in 1932, died in 2015. He's an Egyptian actor who appeared in a lot of Hollywood movies. Really good looking brother.
Very handsome.
He's known best for his roles in Dr. Zhivago and Lawrence of Arabia. He was in Funny Girl, too, which I'd forgotten, honestly. He was nominated, though, for an Academy Award and won the Golden Globe Award 3 times. Sharif's portrayal of Sheriff Ali in Lawrence Arabia earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. So that's the joke. Here we've got an Arab man who is the sheriff. Oh, he's Omar Sharif.
Right.
Sheriff Ali.
Yeah,
all of these are jokes. They're
Yeah.
not good jokes, but that's the reference there.
Yeah, I mean, this is clearly the only brown person in town.
This is the only brown person many of these people have seen in decades.
This is not a diverse town.
No.
Diversity is not their strong suit here. Yeah.
I love that this show buys into not showing the shark. You know, one of the things that we praise Jaws about all the time, Steven Spielberg's Jaws, is that we don't see the shark very often until deep into the movie. The reason they did that is because the puppet didn't work. The machine didn't work.
It looked
right.
stupid.
It was a terrible shark. The same thing happened in Predator. They made Predator, and the original idea was we would see the Predator more often. They had to change that because the suit didn't work, and they had to redo it 3 or 4 times before they got a decent prosthetic, so you really don't see him until the very end of the movie. We don't see what it is that is chasing all of these cats in the uppers.
Right.
We don't see what it was. Probably that same thing that's eating the cats, though, that's chasing Joe Collie, right?
Exactly. We get a little reference to strange happenings.
We don't see Father Paul's face until the very end of the episode. And I think those two things have something to do with one another, Ashley.
That's a very interesting observation there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. They keep him. We don't see him until he's ready for us to see him. Just a choice for sure.
Okay, I've got 3 religious things here that I want to unpack and talk about. Denying Riley communion. I want to talk about transubstantiation, and I want to talk about the prayers to Mecca. And also kiss your mother. I think those 2 things go together. We'll talk about that in a second. But let's start with communion. Okay, so Dad tells Riley. Riley says, first of all, the church isn't for him.
Yeah,
and Dad says, the fuck it's not.
You killed a girl.
Be there.
Take your ass to church. Which, valid point, Dad. I don't know what to say. I've never killed someone in a drunk driving accident. Maybe I would need to take my ass to church.
Okay, I say valid point because he's living in their house, right? Like Riley is literally living on. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't have prospects for a job.
Yeah, where
he's
the
not
fuck
looking.
is he gonna work? Like, there's not.
But where would he go to?
Right.
Like, this is literally all he can do right now.
Right.
Now, he needs to get it together and figure something out. But currently, he doesn't have a plan. He's relying on his mother and father. Go to church. That's part of the deal. I mean, if that's what they want, then that's what you need to do.
Every grown
do it with a good attitude.
Wants to move back in with their parents.
Oh yeah, it's so much fun.
Especially after you fucked up royally. That sounds like a real good time and good for your mental health.
So, but Dad tells him, sit back when it comes to communion.
Right.
Don't take the cup. It wouldn't be proper. It's going to hurt your mama's feelings, but it wouldn't be respectful for you to do it.
Because he hasn't gone to confession?
Because he hasn't gone to confession. That's the reason why Dad says there. So there's actually a couple of things here that come up in churches. And I know theology is obviously complicated and it's a whole web and a spectrum of beliefs. And so lots of people might do these sorts of things for different reasons. But let me tell you a couple of things about open and closed tables. So I grew up in the Free Will Baptist Church. And in that church, they would only do communion like quarterly. They would do communion in the mornings, in the morning service, and in the evening service, they would do foot washing. And yes, it is exactly what it sounds like. There's a scene in the New Testament where Jesus brings the disciples together and washes their feet one by one. Now, in ancient times, the idea was you would walk around in your sandals and your feet were always disgusting, right? They'd have dust and dog shit and who knows what all over them.
Right.
You'd come into the home and you'd wash your feet. He was washing the feet of the disciples to show that even as the teacher and even as the leader of this group, I'm no better than anybody else. I'm a servant. That's my purpose, and we should all serve one another. It was a very beautiful moment. And the idea of foot washing in a religious setting is also, I think, a very lovely thought and a beautiful metaphor to serve one another in that way and to physically, wash one another's feet. It's also real gross, y'all, especially in a small church where it's all 90-year-old men. They divide you up into genders, right? The men go in one room and the women go in another room, and you wash each other's feet.
You don't even get to see pretty feet.
No, it's weird, man. It's weird. I only did it a handful of times personally because we only did it like quarterly. Of course, they wouldn't do it every Sunday. You wouldn't do foot washing every Sunday, right? They'd run your church out. So they don't do communion every Sunday either, though. It's only quarterly. But my father always made a big point that if you're visiting a church and they do communion. Whenever they do communion, if you happen to be there while they're doing communion, if you're not a member of that church, it was his contention
that you did not do communion,
because communion is about a fellowship of that body of believers, right?
Yes.
And they have a shared understanding of what their values are and what their expectations are and what their lived experience has been and where they are with God and their walk and et cetera, et cetera. And so only they're relying on each other and forming this like closed circle of holiness is sort of the way that it was shown to me.
That is a practice I also followed as someone who was frequently a guest at churches and things like that. I would not partake of any sort of thing like that.
So for Catholic churches, I think the general rule is as long as you're sort of on the honor system, like they don't, nobody's standing up. It's not like Dad standing there going, "We don't know you." Yes, but if you aren't a member in good standing, meaning you haven't had a recent confession, you aren't supposed to take the cup. And I think there's even something about outside of your diocese, maybe you're not supposed to take the cup unless you're traveling for a certain amount of time or something. Anyway, there are limits on that. That's a closed table, okay?
Right.
Now, I went to, and I joined most recently, the church that I've attended most recently was United Methodist Church. Now, the ones who broke off from the Methodist Church may have a different opinion of this now, but the United Methodist Church, they have the concept of an open table. It's not my table. It's not this pastor's table. It's not this church's table. It's Christ's table, and Christ has invited anyone
Everyone
who
gets
comes.
Juice and crackers.
But Father Paul says basically the same thing to Riley after the service. Those in a state of grace, I'm really not much good to.
Yeah.
Right. And Jesus didn't much care for those in a state of grace. His friends were all those with problems, those with issues. And I think that's true in the gospel story. And my concept of that, of the idea of communion, has always been that one. If you're going to do it at all, the only way to do it is that it's literally for you, the non-believer, Ashley. Like if I was going to take communion in my home, which I have done before, I have been in situations before where I was very connected and I was in that practicing moment, but I also wasn't in a church.
Right.
I'm a believer, and where 2 or 3 are together, I believe he is there with you. You know, that's what the Bible says. So if you were in my home and I did communion and you wanted to take communion, I think that's a beautiful thing and I'd love to share it with you. And the fact that you don't believe in any of the tenets or most of the tenets that I believe in, that doesn't change the fact that I'm sharing this meal with you. And the reason why I think that's true for me, and it isn't so much for the Catholics and especially this show, is because of the concept of transubstantiation. So let's go there. This is some more weird religion, right?
Yeah.
So the Catholic idea is that at the moment that the priest blesses it and begins to offer the host, it literally changes into the body of Christ and the blood of Christ. So much so that there are specific protocols for disposal of any remains. You cannot throw the host away, Ashley. You cannot pour Jesus into the sink because that's the body and blood of Christ. It's got to be disposed of properly. So for instance, there is a filter that catches under the sink in the back of the churches. There's a filter set up that catches the host. And once you get enough of it, you take the filter out and you burn it.
Well, what?
It's the body of Christ. You can't throw it away.
Well, can't you just drink it?
The blood of Christ you can. The blood of Christ you do. And the priest does. But the body of the host, the remainder of the host, has to be disposed of. Yeah, the wafers.
The body, the wafers.
Yes.
The body.
Again, it's not, this is not, and not every Catholic believes that this happens literally, right? Some believe that this is a metaphor as well. But the concept of transubstantiation as taught by the church is that it literally happens at that moment and it changes into the blood of Christ and the body of Christ. As I said, so much so that you have to handle it as holy relics, right? It's like we had the true cross or whatever there at our communion. Now, when you think about that, how much more would it have to be protected, right? How much more would it have to be preserved only for those that have gotten worthy in whatever way that you've been taught to be worthy. So that's the big deal there. And
that's
I love
very interesting
that in the show they juxtapose, they have this moment at church and then show us Ali and Hassan praying to Mecca. There are rituals all over the world, and one ritual may look different than another, but they are all very much in service to the same thing, which is, and this show talks about it so well, we stare at the stars and we wonder what the hell is going on up there, and we build our own stories around it to make ourselves feel better and to be able to sleep through the night.
Absolutely.
And so this is another one of a little picture of another one of those. I love the extra moment, though, that Ali has. Hassan makes Ali kiss his mother's photo there.
Yes.
Does a couple of things. First of all, makes it clear that mom's passed away.
Mm-hmm.
But it also, I think, ties together our two main flow-throughs of this entire show, which is religion and family.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And how they are really one and the same.
Yeah. And it's setting you up for like how their relationship's going to change and evolve over the course of these 7 episodes.
Yes. Yes. All right. Our final moments of the show happen to Abide With Me. This is our first performance full from the Newton brothers. So Abide With Me is a Christian hymn by Scottish Anglican cleric Henry Francis Light, a prayer for God to stay with the speaker throughout life and in the moment of death. It was written by Light in 1847 as he was dying from tuberculosis. He wrote this as he was dying.
Well,
so the story goes, Ashley, that years earlier, a friend was passing away, and he was there at the deathbed with this friend. And as the friend's eyesight began to fail in the final moments, he held Light's hand and said, abide with me, a few times. And that rattled around in his head. He held it for years, that moment. And when he was dying, he went back to, there's a passage in the Bible that's a reference to that, as well as Jesus asks the disciples to abide with him. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he wrote it right before he, like literally 2 weeks before he passed. And the first time it was publicly performed was at his funeral.
Going out with a bang, sir. That's
right.
Very interesting.
Ironic end to this song, again, just like they did earlier with the opening song from Neil Diamond. The final line, as we hear Abide With Me, we see Riley laying down, and the girl, it's almost as if he's asking her, like, will you stay with me?
Yeah. And we get,
it's really lovely.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's such good use of a hymn and music. You know, they do such a good job of. Something I really liked about Lost is that if you heard music on the island, it was coming from something.
Diegetic. It's one of my favorite words. Diegetic music means arriving. I taught my 16-year-old this the other day.
I love it.
Diegetic music means in a film or a movie or a play, if the music that you are hearing is arriving from the world of the show, a character is playing that music. That's diegetic music. Now, sometimes what will happen is it'll start where it's like coming from there, and then it fills the full soundtrack eventually, but still it's really coming from that guy's headphones or that Walkman or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And they do that quite a bit in this, even like in the very beginning with with Suleiman, he puts on the record, you know, and then you actually have everyone in the church singing together and things like that. So it's just just another example of just really, really good use of music and sound in general. It's so good. This is so good.
Everyone is surprised by Father Paul. Who's that? What's going on here? Everybody's surprised. Bev is the only one who's suspicious.
Yes.
And it sets her off because he's wearing the gold chasuble instead of the green one. His robe is not the appropriate robe for an ordinary time. So in the church, you have the holiday time, basically, which is the what do you call it? Not the nativity. God, I used to know this.
Oh, it's
what's Christmas season?
What is it called? I know what it is even too. Shit.
Y'all, it's been so long since I've been to church. What a shame. All right. Anyway, you have that period of time. Yeah, you'll tell us in the notes. You have that period of time, and then you have the Lent season, and then you have ordinary time, the rest of the year, basically. And so we're in ordinary time here, and he should have on his regular green robes, but he doesn't. He's got the fancy gold robes on.
Fancy.
I wonder why. Oh, I just couldn't find the green robes. Don't worry about it, Bev.
Don't worry about it, Bev. Don't worry about it. Bev also sneaks into his house and is trying to dig around in his locked chest too. So like, Bev is not the nice woman she thinks she is. I
gotta tell you, the first time I watched the show, I wondered whether Bev would last the whole series because of that. No, I said, curiosity killed a cat.
Bitch. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she's all up in everybody's business. God, she's such a busybody.
She is the busiest of busybodies. All right, we will be back to busy our bodies about her and the rest of this. There's a storm a-coming, y'all. I don't know if you know it.
A bad one.
There's a storm here, actually. Ashley, it's so funny.
There is a storm coming.
There's a hurricane coming, like literally tonight. Yeah, Francine is making landfall. I think Baton Rouge is going to end up getting the worst of it down south.
Yeah, sounds like it.
And we'll see how bad it'll affect us. Probably for me, just a couple of heavy rain days and maybe some fallen limbs. But good luck to everybody that's down there.
Yeah, big love to everybody in Louisiana.
Yeah.
It's not a big one, but it can still be a shitty one if it goes slow and drops a lot of rain.
Somebody was asking the other day, they were like, I feel like all my family down south when we were kids, they would just like, they'd do a party every hurricane. Like, why are we worried about it now? I'm like, they don't, when we were kids, they didn't accelerate like they do now.
Yeah.
Like that's what, you don't know this, but like, if you don't live here, but what happens because of global warming, very frankly, because of climate change, the Gulf, and also because of erosion, we've lost a lot of territory there that used to slow these things down. But it hits the Gulf. The Gulf is so warm this time of year, the hurricanes accelerate. And so your projections and how strong it's supposed to be and when it's going to hit landfall, all of that can be thrown out the window like overnight as it's landing. So that's why everybody's so concerned now, basically for every hurricane.
Yeah, and really, I think since Katrina, the big fear is just flooding. Is so much flooding. That was so much of the problem. You know, Jesus Christ. So like whenever they start stalling out and raining slow, I'm like, oh God, everything's gonna flood.
But see, I had a lot of those immediately when they're battening down the hatches here and they're, blocking windows and all of those things that they do on this show. I was immediately like, wait a minute, I have been there before.
I have been there.
We'll be here again.
Yeah.
We'll be here again before you know it, with another episode of Flan-Again, our Mike Flanagan rewatch podcast. We'll be back next week with book 2 of Midnight Mass. Until then, go and watch that. Give us feedback in the comments, especially if you've got some input on those Catholic storylines that we talked about. We'd love to hear that perspective on this show. Ashley, anything else before we wrap up?
No, I just we got to meet almost everyone in the town. We got a little bit of backstory on everybody and got little teases about what's to come. So as usual, he's got us stacked with a really interesting motley crew of characters. So this is such a treat. I'm so excited we're doing this.
I am too. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. All right, we'll look forward to next week, folks. Thank you to all of our Patreons for making this possible. You can join too at articulatecoven.com/join, as well as you can find merch. Our links are in the show notes for that too. And see us again next week. We'll be back soon. I have been Joel.
I'm Ashley.
And we are the Articulate Coven. Thank you for watching Flan-Again, a Mike Flanagan rewatch from the Articulate Coven. If you want our videos and audio early and ad-free, visit articulatecoven.com/join and join the Coven.